Welcome to another EA Champions chat. Steve, we're coming to the end of 2023, looking ahead to 2024.
Olympic year?
Olympic year. And it's interesting,
Yes.
isn't it? We reflect back on our athletic careers as athletes. This was a funny time of year because you sort of started training, doing the winter training for next summer, but you're still reflecting back on the year that's been. And you're in that transition period of moving out of that reflection into focusing ahead as the year turns and really getting, obviously for the athletes at the moment, focusing towards 2024 and the Paris Olympics. But that's the same for anyone in any performance journey, and that includes estate agents, right?
I think so, Rog. We talk about planning and having clarity as such an important factor when it comes to high performance. You got to know where to spend your energy, right? And I think,
Yeah.
yeah, as you say, looking backwards, taking stock, what did we do well? What we'd like to improve? And then I think there's a natural mindset of turning over the page and starting a new chapter. Maybe some New Year's resolutions kick in.
Yeah.
I don't know. And planning, it's an instinctive thing to do as an athlete, but I think it's generic, isn't it? Everyone
Yeah.
celebrates New Year's Eve and then you wake up and you're in 2024. So yeah, it's a great time to reflect, and it's an unusual time as well. But when you look at for the world of estate agents, it's a very different market nowadays to what it was maybe a year ago, 2 years ago, certainly. And that very buoyant, the market was really bubbling up, and a lot of the agents talking to currently, it's very different, and nobody's got a crystal ball. We can all make,
No.
assumptions, but yeah, let's talk about it.
I tell you what, I'm just laughing to myself here because we've sold, we've recently moved. We put our house on the market sort of end of September, beginning of October of 2022.
Good timing,
And when
Rog.
the agent, no, it wasn't good timing because when it wasn't. You'd have the whole, interest rates were clearly going up, and,
Just at the end
it
of
was
it.
a necessity move. It's a very happy downsize. But I remember when the first agent came round to view the house, and he said to me, "Now, if we were doing this a year ago, we'd have loads of offers, and we sell it for the asking price in about 2 weeks. Post COVID,
Yeah. That's helpful, by the way. Yeah, thanks
yeah,
for that.
yeah, thanks, mate.
Yeah.
Cheers." He
Yeah.
said, "However, now, things are getting rocky, and we don't know." So it's been a hell of a year. 2023. I mean, it's been a hell of a year, hasn't it?
Yeah, I mean, interest rates is the obvious thing that's rocked everybody. We've been spoilt by record low interest rates for such a long time, and you and I are old enough to remember
Yeah,
interest rates being in double digits back in the
yeah,
early 90s, and the pain that caused, and the affordability that
yeah.
challenged everyone. So I think everyone's felt a little bit of that, but I think there's a light at the end of the tunnel. I do feel that again, not pretending to forecast anything. Who are we to say that? But you got to look at what banks are offering. Yeah, base rates at 5.25. We're coming towards the end of 2023 now, but you can get fixed money in the fours. You can get 4 point something for fixed for 5 years, and that's still relatively cheap money, especially when you look at inflation ahead of that. So that would suggest to me that the banks are forecasting cheaper days to come, cheaper interest borrowing to come, I should say. And that is certainly something that impacts the housing market for buyers and sellers. And the market does seem to be, it just does react to sentiment, whether we like it or not.
Mm.
And I think, put all that together, I think 2024 we could be optimistic. I think
Okay.
we
So
could be looking forward to something pretty special next year.
let's reflect to when we were athletes, and I think if we're talking about world-class estate agents, what we learned as athletes was you can only deal with what is in front of you. You haven't got time to look back and dwell. You haven't
Control the
got time to,
controllables, right?
yeah, and you can't predict the future. Okay, you just can't. So all you do, and I was doing an event the other day, and I had a question about that, and it was really interesting because I said I nicked one of your lines actually. It was a case that we prepared for 7 months to compete for three, or 8 months to compete for three as athletes and take a month off, and it was the whole point of you prepare, you plan, you go through that process, which we really did, the goal setting process. But then the skill is every day to be in the moment. When you are training, you are in the moment. You are in the moment. And I was thinking that must be what it's like for an estate agent, because estate agents are busy people. They're very busy people. They plan, they have to be efficient, and they have to use their time efficiently. And they have to focus, I guess, like as athletes, on the important things. And it's that ability to plan, but also be in the moment and focus on the things that really matter to improve performance.
Yeah, I completely agree, Roger. And having that clarity, or taking ownership of that journey, gives you clarity, right? The clarity doesn't necessarily come to us. But I think the difference, we never pretend to say that or suggest that the sports world's the same as other industries. Certainly when it comes to property, there's so many factors out there, so many things that are out of your control. So, okay, coming back to your point, what is in our control? What can we take the reins on and make decisions towards? And we talk a lot about planning, don't we? Have your end goal, plan backwards, break that down into bite-sized chunks, all that stuff. I think a big part of something that we're seeing, and I'd be interested to get your opinion on this, is talking to estate agents, as we're doing on a daily basis now, and the shift that we're seeing towards independent agents.
Yeah.
And I think there's a lot of factors going on here. Obviously, the high street's challenged for cost and of facilities. The Gen Z, or whatever they're called, the current youngsters are probably more comfortable working from home, so probably more comfortable, therefore becoming independent. And I think taking that ownership and not relinquishing that to an employer, there's a lot of factors there that will play into.
You can see the appeal of that, because making that step out of employment into independence and running your own agency gives you a high degree of control. You can actually wake up in the morning and go, right, today I'm going to do this.
Yeah.
I'm going to focus on this, because I couldn't do that when I was within a corporate structure. The flip side to that is, what are you going to do? You haven't got the safety and the security of the churn of the system. Yeah. But I know for us as athletes, we knew no different. We've lived our whole lives in that space where ultimately we've known that we've had to take accountability for our time and our focus. Don't get me wrong, we had huge support as athletes. We had coaches, we had training partners. There was a system, but ultimately when it came down to it, it was a choice what you did and how you did it within that system, and how you turned up on the day. And that must be exhilarating for somebody who moves into independence, knowing, right, I've always wanted to sort of, create videos on social media. I've always wanted to do YouTube. Really want to go down the social media. I really want to really go on the door knocking and the letters and whatever it may be. But you can control what you do. The challenge is finding out what really works for you, isn't it? And maybe part of that's trial and error.
Yeah, I think so. I think the mindset, we talk about that in other videos in terms of the translatable factors that are pertinent and do translate. But I think the principle of, do you want to plan for, let's take the context of what we're talking about here, planning for 2024. Do you want the ownership of that? Or do you want to be one of those people that just tell me what to do? I'll turn up at 9 o'clock every day, but when I clock off at 5, I just want to go home. And that's fine. And they're probably not going to be the type of person who's going to take on the independent agency role and route. And there's nothing wrong with that. But, from what we see and the benefits, the rewards, the lifestyle, there's so many things that are in favor if you're prepared to say, okay, and this is a great time of year to have this chat. What's your plan for 2024? Is your current trajectory going to take you there? If it's not, then we need to have a chat, because there's another way, potentially.
Yeah. I was thinking as you were saying that, back to the athletic days, and where I think it translates is, what's your take on the whole what if thing? And when I say that, I remember prior to the 96 Olympic Games for me, so sort of 10 months out, 11 months out. I don't know if you remember, we both went to the 96 Games in Atlanta. The chat amongst athletes, the chat amongst the Olympic team was the weather. What's the weather going to be like in Atlanta? Do you remember? It was like, it's going to be so hot and humid in Atlanta, and people were sitting in humidity chambers. People were worrying about the weather. Yeah. It was a big form of discussion. The irony is, I don't know if you remember, when we actually got to Atlanta, it wasn't hot. It wasn't like that. It was quite pleasant, wasn't it?
Yeah.
The reason I was thinking about that is controlling the controllables is a massive part of planning, because what if in a state agency in 24, what if interest rates go up again? What if interest rates go down again? What if we're thinking what if, do you think that is distracting us away from being in the moment, or do you think we should always have a contingency?
Ah, tricky one. That's very deep. Boy. That's deep. That is.
Oh, yeah.
My take on that is you got to do both,
Right.
because having a plan for every scenario allows us to come back into the present. That's my take. So actually, I remember, we used to work with Professor Dave Collins, great sports psychologist. I remember he asked me to do an exercise where we planned and came up, almost put your paranoid hat on and say, right, what could happen? Exactly. You just said, what if this happened? What if that?
Yeah.
Okay, have a plan for that. Have a plan for that. If you have a ready-made plan for any scenario, not in massive detail, but have a basic principle. If that happens, I will do this.
Okay.
It gives a feeling of immense comfort. I
And
found.
control. I guess your brain is
And
saying,
control.
I've imagined if that happens, I've imagined the scenario, so therefore I have a degree of control that if it did happen, my brain will I've already been there.
Yeah, and yeah. So I suppose there's a sort of a self-leadership sort of mentality, which is the same as being a successful athlete. I think there's very few athletes who get to the highest level who are guided. There are some, but I think it's a really a relevant observation is the most successful people are the ones who actually take that ownership, as you say it, and take the reins. And in therein lies a similarity with that soul journey. Be surrounded by talent, get around clever people, but have the confidence and the commitment to take the reins and have that clarity every day. There's something that is in your control and that you can do something about should something change, rather than wait for someone to tell you.
So to sum up, this is about planning for 2024. Have a plan. Look at all the scenarios. But once you've had that plan, once you've got that written down, or you visualized it, or whether we used to do as athletes, bring it right down to plan for the future, but come right back to today and get in the moment and focus on the things you can control today, and be aware of what could happen in the future to take you off course. But if you've made a plan and you can still hold that plan in your head, but also come down to the moment, you are, as we often say, in the game we were in of sport, I think it translates to any business. You make it as likely as possible that you will achieve your goals in 2024. Is that a good summation, Steve?
I think you smashed it, and I think to maybe boil that down even further is, where are you now? Where do you want to be? How are you going to get there? And I think if we do that as we close out 2023, looking ahead for 2024, we're in a good place.
Okay, great.
Top man.
Thanks, Steve. Thanks for
Cheers,
listening,
Rog.
everybody.
See you soon.
See you in 24.